I'm going to try not to be long on this video, but I just want to comment on an article that was written regarding Jamal Bryan, where he calls out Christians who burn sage. He says it's witchcraft, satanic aromatherapy. Now, much of what he spoke on in this article is valid information. It's true. A lot of what he says is true. But when it comes down to Jamal Bryan, the first thought comes to my mind when he teach on messages like this is the fact that he committed adultery. He went outside of his home. He tore up his home. He tore up his family. And then even after he was divorced, he had a child out of wedlock. So pastors like this, it's really hard for me to listen to what they have to say. They could be teaching the truth, but it's extremely hard to listen to them. Not so much as because of the message that he teaches, but because of how he teaches the message and how he condemns people that do these things. Now, when it comes to sage, I've studied and researched sage myself, and it's like burning frankincense and myrrh. It's all according to your will and the intention that you put into it. It's your motive and intention behind doing that, because even in voodoo or Santeria or other forms of dark magic or dark arts, it's according to your motive and intention, because many of them use the book of Psalms. You have places that sell witchcraft items. They also sell the book of Psalms. And they use the Psalms for magic, for various types of craft. So it really depends upon your motive and intent on using that. So everything he said in this article, and I'm going to put the link on the bottom and you can read it for yourself. But everything he said in this, the majority of what he said, I agree with him. But I just can't wrap my mind around the fact that he tore up his family, he tore up his church, and then even after his divorce, he had a child out of wedlock. Now, what also threw me off in this article is where he said, the people who believe that they are their own God, we don't know how to approach them or even how to attack it, because we have minimized demonic possession as those who are foaming around their mouth, eyes are roaming in the back of their head, and they are squirming on the floor. That's how we recognize demons, he said. But this is where he threw me off. Demonic possession, he argued, can be reflected in a number of ways, including when someone cannot apologize or is unwilling to submit to the leadership and the order of their church. In other words, submit to him as God. So he goes from talking about how people believe that they are their own gods and how they're worshiping demons and practicing witchcraft, and then he takes it into the fact that they are not submitting or can't apologize or unwilling to submit to leadership and the order of their church. Not God, but the leadership and the order of their church. Now, another issue I have with this is that there are so many black people that's leaving the black church and that have negative thoughts regarding the black church, simply because of the fact that there's nothing really to hold them outside of religion in the black church. It's sad that black people have to delve into witchcraft and the dark arts in order for preachers to start trying to preach righteousness or holiness to them, when they should have been preaching and teaching it all along to keep them. There are so many people that's still in church, that's lost in church. They shout every Sunday in church. They speak in tongues. They pray. They fast. They receive communion. They attend Bible study, Sunday school. They're in the choir. They're on the usher board. They pay their tithe and offering, but they are still lost in church because there's nothing in church to hold them. Once they leave that building, they have to live their life. They now have to deal with reality in the world. And the churches are not giving them the tools and the weapons that they need to be able to survive in the world. So many of them are being washed away. Many are being washed away with the elements and the evils of society. Many of them are committing suicide. And it's sad because they would preach against burning sage, but yet right in their own churches, they have sodomites in the pulpit. They have sodomites in the choir. They have sodomites in every level of the church. But they don't preach against that. And I've always said, and I will still say, that a homosexual and a transgender should never feel comfortable in church. A person that's committing a sin, a person that's committing an abomination, should never be able to sit in church comfortably. It's going to have two effects on them. It's either going to cause them to want to do right and make efforts to change and do right, or it's going to run them out of the church. Because there's no way that a person that commits sin, that practices sin, and a person that's committing an abomination, there's no way that they should be able to sit comfortably in a church. Sunday after Sunday, they feel so at ease being in that environment, and will even stand up and testify or test a lie and feel comfortable doing it. The people will make them feel comfortable in their mess because the church is not teaching holiness. The church is not teaching about demonic possessions and the tricks that the devil have for those that follow Christ. They don't teach that. They give them a watered down message every single Sunday. Make them feel welcomed because of the dollars. But no unrighteousness should be allowed in the house of God. When that preacher stand up, he should be able to stand up without fear and preach the word or preach the gospel in season and out of season, whether people want to hear it or whether they forbear it. As a matter of fact, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, "Woe unto the pastors that destroy and scatter the sheep of my flock." Jamal Bryan destroyed the sheep. He destroyed the flock by his actions. And then after his divorce, he then produced a child out of wedlock. So how can he stand up and preach against burning sage? when I'm sure he stand up every Sunday before sodomites and don't preach against transgenderism. I just read an article where now, and this is in Russia, where now they have a doll for children, transgender dolls that have boy parts. This is what they are programming our children to grow up to be. They have it in cartoons. But how many preachers do you know, how many gospel preachers that's preaching out against that? They're afraid because they're afraid of losing membership. They're afraid of losing finances. And they are afraid of being brought to the light. And it's sad because when you do have a preacher that stand up and preach righteousness and someone records them, and now he started taking pressure from society or from the demonic element, then he began to start backpedaling. He started going back on his word. There's not too many preachers I know that will stand up and speak boldly. He's afraid of losing his tax status or his tax exempt status. He's afraid of what people might say about him, that he's homophobic. So he attacked people that burn sage when the church also burned incense. There are churches or pastors that preach against burning incense. Even if you're burning incense to make your house smell good, they feel you're covering up something. Where your house should be so clean to the point where you don't need to burn incense. Incense are usually burned to cover up funk or to cover up mess that you're in. But I want to play a small clip from Jamal, Bryan, the same person that they're speaking about in this article that referred to burning sage as witchcraft and demonic aromatherapy. Listen to what this man says.
You've been very open over the years about past infidelity.
Yes.
And in how you grew from that.
Yes.
What do you make of some people out there who will look at this decision to bring you in as senior pastor as new birth trading one controversy for possibly another?
No, I think that it's right on target to be a match made in heaven. Who else could help lead a church through scars and pain if you've never done so yourself? There's a complete distinction between apathy and empathy. You have to live through some things in order to address it and meet it.
So keep this in mind. He just got done condemning burning sage. Now, myself personally, I don't like burning sage. I don't like the smell of sage. It smells like weed to me, right? I just don't like the smell of it. Every now and then, I may burn it for whatever reason, depending on what I'm doing, right? But I don't really burn it that much. I prefer frankincense and myrrh when I'm praying, or if I'm around negative energy, I burn frankincense and myrrh. That's what I do. But there are preachers or churches that teach against even burning incense. Well, when you stand up and you wearing that robe, that clergy robe, it's got a cross on it. Or you got crosses in your church. Or you have a false image or idol of Jesus on the wall, a white Jesus. So, unless you clean your house, and I'm not just talking about the physical house or the physical church, unless you sanctify your own selves, how can you preach against someone that burns sage? How can you preach against someone that practices dark arts when you are making the homosexuals feel comfortable in your church? You don't preach against transgenderism. As a matter of fact, you welcome them in. And you talk and you call them brothers and sisters. Well, according to the Bible, Yeshua had asked the question, who are my brothers and who is my sisters? He said, those that do the will of God, those are my brothers and my sisters, my mother, my brother. Those are not the exact words, but he's basically saying those who do the will of God, that's my brother, that's my sister, that's my mother. But yet you have transgenders in the church. You have sodomites in the church. You have lesbians in the church. And you, as a preacher, refer to them as your brother or as your sister when they are outside of the will of Yah. How are they your brothers and sisters when they're not in the will of God? But yet you condemn people for doing what they're doing when you should have taught them or prepared them a long time ago. So, feedback, tell me what you think, subscribe. Until next time, I'm fearless.